In the meantime, we have the gratitude guy himself. This is David George Brooks, been a speaker, teacher, life coach, and best-selling author for over 25 years. And he was a former Nordstrom store manager who managed the corporate world for over 30 years. Now, that's 55 years of doing things, so he must have started as a manager when he was 5. Work out the math. But he's the author of the Brooker's Daily Gratitude Journal, Happiness Starts with Gratitude, and Gratitude Nuggets to Chew On. He's featured on local television broadcast studios by interesting hosts that want to find interesting speakers to talk about unusual subjects, which he does. He now has over 400 gratitude videos posted on YouTube, so thousands have seen his message. He's now considered a leading authority on gratitude, and living a life of gratitude can enhance and improve your life. Or as I keep telling my children, you can never say thank you, and my wife, you can never say thank you often enough. David George Brooks, the Gratitude Guy.
Thank you, Tom. I also want to thank Dennis Johnson. Dennis contacted me initially to speak to the group, and Jamie as well, and all the people that came up and said hi. Let me start out with a question for everybody here. How many people here have suffered a significant personal loss in your life? Thank you. Everywhere I go, I speak to high schools. I've even been into junior highs, and I've done prisons, I've done churches, I've done all sorts of different groups. And it's always interesting to me, 80 to 90% of the people raise their hands. And it tells me that a lot of people have gone through difficult times in life. Life is such a cyclical timeline, if you will. Well, let me tell you about my significant personal loss. September 29th, 1998, it was a Tuesday. I woke up and I looked over to my right, and my wife wasn't in bed. I thought, that's strange, I wonder where Dana is. And as I was wondering, Connor, my 4-year-old, comes in. Where's Mom? I don't know, let's go find her. So we walk out the hallway, and my 14-year-old Kyle comes in. Same question. We don't know. So we look in a couple of rooms, and we walk down, and we look downstairs, and here's Dana down in front of the washer and dryer, and she's kind of curled over. It doesn't look good. So we go running down there. I turn her over. All this stuff's coming out of her mouth, and Connor starts crying immediately. I said to Kyle, go call the police, call fire, call anybody you can. And within a matter of minutes, there was probably 20 or 25 people in our house. And they had her out on the floor, and they had these wires and tubes and those paddles and that shock thing and everything, and it was the most surrealistic thing I'd ever seen. Didn't even know if I was dreaming or this was real or what have you. But I do remember this. This little short fire person comes over to me and says, Mr. Brook, we've been working on your wife for an hour and a half, and we still have no heartbeat. Would you like us to continue? I remember thinking at that very moment, I don't think ever before in my life had I had to make a life and death decision for somebody. And I thought for a minute, and I said, no, you can stop. And she was dead. And she was 38 years old. And I realized even when you go through something that traumatic, your brain still has some portion of it that works. Because I didn't know if I was dreaming this, as I mentioned, or it was a nightmare, what was going on, if it was real. Within a few days, though, it started to become very real. And what had changed for me so much, or what had made it such a challenge, I should say, is that wasn't the first death I experienced. I was talking to Tom Russell earlier. My father was a pretty good litigator, an attorney, and he decided to kill himself one day. And my mom had passed away earlier from cancer. She had some real challenges. When I graduated from Queen Anne High School way back in 1968, the night I graduated, 2 of my best buddies were killed in the car accident. It just went on and on and on. And I remember thinking at some point, I'm going to have to figure out some way to cope with this crazy thing called life. I got 2 little boys I've got to raise, and I'm going to have to stick around. But within a couple of days, when the shock, the numbness had kind of worn through, I walked up to this deck we had in our house. We lived down by Green Lake. And I remember like yesterday just kind of pinching my skin and just going, I'm just another guy trying to get through this world. Now I got these 2 boys that are going to need a dad. Mom's gone, and all these other things that happened. But when I was doing this, I remember thinking, for the first time in my life, I understood why people killed themselves. Because it's just too much. I had too much. I couldn't take it. But I sat there and looked out at those clouds for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I thought, I'm not doing that. And once you take a decision off the table, it's no longer an option. So now I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to have to get out here and I'm going to have to live life and I'm going to have to raise these 2 boys. So as I thought about it more, I realized it does come down to how you look at something. It really does. So what I'd like you to all do, if you just stand up for a second, be so kind. And I'd like you to take your right arm and start turning it in a clockwise manner. Now, I don't see any clocks here, so if anybody needs any help, here's a watch. You know, everything's digital now. You know, there's no clock faces, it's just numbers. So just keep turning it clockwise. That's this way. And then just start slowly bringing it down. Slowly bring it down. Keep it going clockwise. Forehead, eyes, nose, chin, chest. And now bring it down to your waist. Now what direction is it going? Counterclockwise. Thank you. Okay, you can sit down. There's always a few people, this is my favorite part. They're still going, what the heck's going on here? And they're still doing like this. I have a couple of friends of mine that are PhDs. I'm just a graduate of the University of Washington, so just a regular business degree, bachelor degree. They come up to you, how does that work? I said, what do you mean, how does it work? Well, do they change midstream? I said, no, you look at it from above and below. It's my way of saying it depends on how you look at something. So you have that choice to make, and you have that in your mind. You can pick either way. But as I went through this, I hadn't gotten gratitude at that point. I had just learned that I'm going to have to get some tools. I'm going to have to find out something. So as I went forward, I realized later, it also depends on, you can't give up on stuff. Can't give up on anything. And I forget who it was. It was Tom or somebody asked me. Maybe it was Jamie. It was Jamie. Do you want a PowerPoint? And I get asked that all the time. I get to do 2 or 3 talks a week. I've got another one at noon over in West Seattle. I feel very, very blessed to be doing what I'm doing. But one of the things I talk about is I like to look at everybody's eyes. I think it was Dale, maybe I said that too. I'm not sure. But with PowerPoint, you don't get to do that. And I tell people, every one of your paths is different. 18-year-old Myra. Everybody, it doesn't matter. I'm one of the older guys here. It doesn't matter. Don't even look to your left or your right. It kind of depends on not them, but you. So I decided a long time ago, I was going to be a speaker when I was 19. That was 44 years ago. I am 63 years old.
Keep talking, Junior.
Bring down the average age.
I know you're thinking, man, he doesn't look a day over 62.
You're not in high school today.
But you can't give up. And one of the things I notice is a lot of people have given up in my life. For the 20 or 25 people that have died that were very close to me, half of them were of their own hand. It made me sick. Suicide, I mentioned my father, pills, booze, all this nonsense that's out there. Dana had died of a prescription pill overdose. Vicodin and Oxycontin, she'd gotten hooked on that kind of stuff. It's crazy. And I realized you can't give up. And so here's Connor, who's 4, and Kyle, who's 14, as I mentioned. And Connor, as you can imagine, they're both struggling, but especially Connor. So they tell me Connor's not doing well. He's in preschool. They need to do an assessment. So they take him in, they put him through all these tests and things. And she comes up, we need to talk to you about your son. She goes, he's messed up. He's not going to make it in life. I said, his mother just died 6 months ago, for gosh sakes. Yeah, I know, but he's got problems. He's going to need occupational therapy and this, that, and so forth. So I got back outside and I said, just before I left, I said, we live by Green Lake. He's going to go to Roosevelt High School, and I was a decent athlete. He's going to be the quarterback someday. She goes, no, he's not. She starts laughing. I never forgot it. He was 4 years old, 4 and a half. So I went out to the car, and I said to Connor, and I just lost it. I started to talk, and I said, what are you crying for, Dad? And I couldn't stop crying. It's my little baby boy. He's not going to make it in life. So I had to hold him back in first grade. He wanted to play sports, but he kept trying. Now, for those of you that are parents, when you play t-ball, the ball doesn't even move. The ball just sits on the tee. How do you miss the ball? I don't know. He's swinging, and he's up. I go, Connor, it's down here. I know, Dad, I'm getting it. And he finally, I said, lower. He hits the tee. The ball dribbles forward. He goes, I got to hit. Connor, you have to hit the ball. But he kept trying. He just would not give up. We go through all the coach pitch t-ball, all the different levels, and he can't hit. He can't run. He can't throw. He can't catch. Other than that, he was fairly decent. But we finally get to May 31st, 2005. He's about 9 years old now, 10. And we're in a game. He doesn't play. We're in a game, and it's bottom of the 7th, and they're down 7-6. And I think the guy is just out of players. And there's 2 guys out and the guy on second and third. So I look over to the dugout. Guess who's coming out? Here comes Connor. He's walking towards the front, to the home plate, rather. He looks up in the stands. Dad, I'm up. And I said, Connor, you don't talk to your parents. You ignore your parents when they're in the stands. But he gets up there and he's just swinging away, and all of a sudden, ball 1, ball 2, goes to full count. Next pitch comes in. He rips it down the third base line. Goes just inside the bag, into left field. The guy from third comes in. The guy from second rounds third. Comes in, the ball, the catcher, they all come together. The guy catches it, they crash, and the ball pops out. And they win 8-7. And he's standing out on second base by himself. Dad, I got a hit. I've got a lump in my throat the size of a hard ball, softball. I can't even talk. The entire group goes out to second base, puts him on the shoulders, and carries him off the field. I can remember it like 2 seconds ago. But my point in the story is when we got home that night, I sat him down on the bed and I said, Connor, it was never, ever about baseball. It was about the fact that you never gave up. And he never, ever gave up. And he pressed on, and I had to hold him back, as I mentioned, in school. In first grade, he went twice. But he continued on to Bothell High School. And in his final year, he was playing baseball. And he was the leadoff hitter for the team and one of the best hitters on the team because he never gave up. And then this is kind of a small picture, but he graduated last year. And now he's in San Diego going to school. And he had a 3.5 average, the same kid that was told he wasn't going to make it, which I can't believe somebody said. And we have to constantly encourage people all the time, and it makes such a difference. But it just reminded me of why you can't give up. I don't care what your story is, and that's why when people raise their hands, I'm fortunate enough, I have books and my journals and things I sell, but the best part of what my talking is now is not this, it's afterwards when people come and tell me their stories. A lot of people don't like to talk in front of groups, but boy, one-on-one, I hear some incredible stories. And I want to know what was the way that you kept going. Because this crazy life is this up and down cycle, as I mentioned, can really be challenging. I found out you're going to have to embrace gratitude. It's one of the best coping mechanisms I ever found. Number 2, you can't give up. You just can't. But you've also got to make room for gratitude, and you got to clear this junk out of our brains. I'm fascinated by how often I tell people, when you go out in your car today, notice the windshield's about this deep and it's about this wide. It's pretty big size, pretty good size. And then the rear view mirror is like this. So kind of keep that in mind. That's probably 100-to-1 or something like that. Some proportion of that nature. Now, if you see some flashing blue lights here, you got to pull over. I get it. We don't want to get in trouble. Just telling the guy you're looking at the windshield, you can't worry about him. But it's so important, and I notice people do this all the time. I do workshops, and again, I'm blessed enough to do a lot of things around gratitude. But people drive over stuff, they pick it up behind them, put it in front of them again, drive over it again. Same stuff. And you know what I notice in the workshops? The number one thing that comes up is spouses, ex-spouses. Well, if it wasn't for him, well, how long ago was that? It was 23 years ago. You're still talking about that. That's still the reason why you're not where you should be. So what happened, and this is what is so important to me, is really the centerpiece of what I talk about. A buddy of mine says to me, "You're messed up. My fraternity brother said I wasn't the same for 5 or 6 years. I'm an outgoing guy, I talk a lot, I talk fast. I wasn't the same. As I said, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make it through this, and I kept trying. I got to raise these boys." As you can see with Kyle, who's now 19, and Connor is 29, I made it. But he says, you need a gratitude journal. Now, how many people here have ever heard of a gratitude journal? A few. How many have ever heard of a journal? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Myra. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice job parenting.
Yeah.
Good job. That was a great story, by the way. That gives me tremendous hope in our youth. Sometimes I get, as I was mentioning, I managed Nordstrom stores for many years and more recently Lowe's. And I left Lowe's. I was running the store in Mount Vernon. And on a side note, I got so discouraged with some of the kids. It was just so frustrating. I ain't got none. I seen him, me and him. I'd be getting my GED and drugs and crack and whack and all this sort of weird stuff. And I would take them all under my wing, try to be a parent, because I love being a parent. I wish we'd had a lot more kids. This is a great job, and I love being called daddy. But what I noticed was so interesting is that I met some of the parents of some of those kids, and I realized I was mad at the wrong people. I just went, wow, that's their role model, and they're just doing what they've been shown. So when this buddy says this to me, I got one, I ordered one off Amazon, and I did what a lot of people do. I just put it on the shelf, didn't touch it for 3 months. But then I started writing in it. I started noticing all these things that were changing. It's just amazing when you focus on what you're grateful for. I do these videos. Tom was mentioned in the intro. I do a different video every single day on gratitude. It makes you focus on everything you have in your life versus what you don't have. And it's so important. And we write it, and we talk about it, and we think about it. In fact, when I said this, if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. But if you write about it, it empowers you. To the schools I go, number one question is not PowerPoint, out of the audience. Do you have an app? Do we have to have the book? Do you have an app I can put on my phone? Actually, I do have one, and my phone's over in my jacket. But I can put on there, press the little button on the Brookers Daily Gratitude Journal. I'm so grateful to Dennis Johnson and Tom Russell and Jamie for inviting me today. It'll type it. And you just press a button, and there's my gratitude. But it's not the same. It starts with a thought in your brain, which is the CPU up here, goes into your heart, kind of one of our filters where so many things come from our heart to your arm, to your hand, to the pen, to the paper, and it's there, and you write it. And I'm so grateful for so many things in my life. So what I'd like to do is I'd just like to tell you a teeny bit about the format that I do, and this is now mine, the Brookers Daily Gratitude Journal. I sell a lot of these, but as I said, you could buy mine. I sell the books and things, but I don't care if you get a spiral notebook. It doesn't matter to me, but it makes a difference. And back to everybody who raised their hand, so many people I talk to have lost a lot of people as well from people who couldn't cope. It isn't always just diseases and things that happen. A lot of people are very responsible for their lives, and something like this can make such a huge difference. Up here, it's the day and the date and this daily number, which I'll come back to in a second. A couple of lines for current events. Rotary meeting this morning, whatever it might be, so you don't have to have a diary. Everything you're grateful for your day. The highlight of your day. Huge, important thing. I was at a meeting recently. It wasn't the Seahawks NFC, but it was the wild card, or the divisional. And of course, I said, the highlight of your day, everybody screams out, beating the Saints, you know. So that's whatever was the most important thing. And then on the right-hand side, that's your gratitude intentions. That's everything you're going to be grateful for. The prefrontal cortex, the subconscious mind, cannot distinguish between what you think is going to happen and what actually happens. You can program it by telling it what you're grateful for before it's even happened. I've timed this tons and tons of times. There's smaller lines. You can write big. 5 to 6 minutes. That's all it takes to write in a gratitude journal. 5 to 6 minutes. And it can be so life-changing. So I just want to do a little experiment. So daily number. This is what I use as the daily number. 10 is the best day of your life. 1 is the worst day of your life. So there's everything in between. At this very moment, how are you feeling? And I tell people, think about all the things in your life and just get a number there. So I'd like you to think about that number. No halves, just pick a number. 10 is the best, 1 is the worst. So get that number in your head if you will. And then I'd like you to ask you to raise your hands in a second. So if you're a 1 to a 5, I don't want you to raise your hand. If you're having a hard day, I don't want to embarrass anybody. But how many people here are 6? Okay, 7s. Okay, about a third. 8s. Okay, great. 9s. 3, and any 10s. Oh, fantastic. 3 10s. Okay, so here's what I'd like you to do. I normally do this with paper, but I want you to just do this very individually to yourself and just think about this. Don't even pay attention to your neighbor. I want you to think about the most grateful thing you have in your life. What are you the most grateful for? Just you. The number one thing, if you can only pick one thing. Okay, so plant that in your brain. Now the second thing is, what's the second most grateful thing you have after that? Number 1 and number 2. I know what they are for me, but I'm talking about just for you, for yourself. And then the third thing, after you have those 2, is what was the highlight of your day yesterday? What was the best thing that happened to you? Okay, so Number one thing you're grateful for, the number two thing you're grateful for, and the highlight of your day yesterday. Okay? So now you got that in your brain. So let me try this again. 1 to 5, don't answer. 6s, we didn't have any. 7s. 1. 8s. A couple more. 9s. And 10s. Okay, 2 or 3 more 10s. Thank you. When you write it down, you see it, but just that small exercise will show you what happens. Because so many people focus again on what they don't have versus what they do have. So it makes such a big difference. And I tell people, try it. I've gotten, as you heard in the intro, I get to do TV and radio, some different things. And one of the things radio always asks is, what's your final thing? What's the one thing you want the listeners to know? And I tell them, just try a gratitude journal. That's all I ask. Just try a gratitude journal. And see what happens. Now, I will tell you this too. I do these videos. I did one recently on excuses. And I had the line was, one excuse is as good as the next. And I had somebody say, well, your little journal here. You can see, of course, I write in mine every day. And there's my book stop with Connor. And somebody goes, well, it doesn't lay real flat here. It's not really flat. I said, well, what, maybe I'll get a spiral next time. And they go, well, yeah, this is difficult for me. And I go, well, maybe life's going to be, come on. This is like... My mother, when I get to that daily number, I'll tell you one quick story. My mother was manic depressive. And then she died of cancer, as I mentioned. But before that, she was all messed up. And she used to do something to me that was horrifying. When I was at the University of Washington, I was in school, she would call me, and she would take a bottle of pills, and she'd go like this. You either come over and see me right now, or I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to take this entire bottle of sleeping pills. This is before all that started. She'd just shake it like that. And I remember thinking, so Mr. Gallup, I need to leave the bookstore I was working, and I'd have to go see my mom. What do you do in a case like that? In my late teens to early 20s. But when I finally figured out one day, I think I got maybe pieces of that. So I woke up one day and I was a 2. And I'm just being completely transparent. I was depressed, and I thought, I don't know what's going on. So I thought, you know what? You better practice what you preach. So I grabbed my gratitude journal and I went down to Starbucks and I wrote in it. 5, 6, 7 minutes, had a little latte. And that bumped me up to about a 4 or 5. So I felt a little better, but I still wasn't right. So I was doing a talk, and it was Burlington Chamber up north. And I went to the chamber, and I did the talks. About 200 people. It's a good-sized group. And after I was done, people came up, and I talked to them, and they tell me their stories, and I sell them some books, things like this. But this one lady's just crying, and she says, my name is Janice, and I want to tell you, you just changed my life. And when you hear that from somebody, it's not about what I did or said. It's just a tool I'm giving her that might help her in her journey, because ultimately it's all our own journeys. But I said, can I ask you what it was? And she says, well, I'd rather not say, it's going to get me upset, but I will just tell you, you changed my life, and I'm going to try this journal and so forth. So I gave her a hug, and then I left, and I got back in the car. And if you ever wonder who your best friend is in your life, think who the first person is you call when you get the best or the worst news in your life. That's kind of how you find out. At least that's one of the litmus tests that I was aware of. So I was going to call Connor, tell him about this great experience, and I was going to call Kyle. There's kind of 1 and 2, my now 19 and 29-year-old sons. But I decided, nope. And I realized now it was a 9.5. And as I like to carry it around, I didn't have a bottle of beer, and I didn't snort this powder, and I didn't smoke this weed stuff. I mean, there's all these things people do to deal with life. I'd written in my journal, and I made a difference in a person's life, and I went from a 2 to a 9. Do I have to wrap up? Yeah. Okay. And so it was interesting to me that as I'm driving along, and I get this smile on my face, and I look in the rearview mirror, and I turn the rearview mirror, and I just have this big smile, and I go, I'm so freaking proud of you. You're just not selling hammers and nails up here at Lowe's. You're trying to make a difference in somebody's life. So I encourage people to try it. And the last thing that I will tell you is embracing gratitude. It takes as long as it takes. Don't ever give up. Make room for gratitude. Try a gratitude journal. Again, you can try mine. It's great. If not, give them a spiral. But the last thing is share gratitude. Anytime you get something you're excited about, Look at this Seahawks thing. People were flocking to taverns and homes. Everybody wants to share in the energy. So try it and share it. And I realized what a difference it makes when you share something. I went to be a skydiver. I never did the drugs and all that junk, but I was kind of an adrenaline guy. So I made an appointment for 8 guys. And then I noticed about a week before, 2 or 3 guys, I was down to 7, then I was down to 6. And then the Wednesday before that Saturday, I got a couple of calls. I think I have a sore throat. So I walk up to Issaquah skydiving to the counter and I go, Brooke, party of 8 for skydiving. And he goes, where's your friends? And I go, I don't have any. It was just me. And I went skydiving by myself. I have the picture of it and everything, and jumping out of the airplane and stuff. But I had no one to share it with. So when you get something that works, what is Rotary? I'm a member of Seattle 4. I'm a huge fan of Rotary. Service above self. If you want to help yourself, help other people. So if you find something that works, in this case, gratitude, share it with other people. It enhances the experience so much. And I know Rotarians get it. I don't have to say that. But I speak to Chambers and Kiwanis and Lions, all these other places. But just try that. And I will tell you, gratitude can change. It can transform a life. And I believe, in my case, it truly saved my life. And it can save yours too. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Before you run off, our expression of gratitude for our speakers is 300 pounds of fresh
Oh, perfect.
food for
Thank you,
those who
Jamie.
need it. Thank you very much
Yeah,
for your time today.
you bet.
And I don't know about everybody else, but I certainly know my number is higher after your talk.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so
Perfect.
much.
I'd give you that $20 in just a second. Thanks, you guys.
Any last minute announcements? I know that Billy said that you've got a committee meeting. Just wanted to get everybody together after.